Okay, so the blues is not just the pentatonic scale. It's not mixing the major and the minor pentatonic scale, and it's definitely not learning some cool licks. And for those who think the blues is redundant, I don't think that they're actually approaching it in the right way. To me, the blues is chord tones, and chord tones. And the most amazing thing is with these chord tones, it's just 3 notes per chord that you need to get under your fingers, and maybe a 4th if you want to get some extra flavor and color, which I prefer. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest way to play through a blues, where it sounds like you're playing sophisticated music and not just some fancy licks that you learned on YouTube. My name's Jesse Lick. This is a 5-Minute Monday. Let's get into it. Okay, so chord tones, and chord tones. In this lesson, I'm not going to go over the theory of any of these notes. I'm just going to use their number intervals and how they relate to each chord. So what do I mean by chord tones? In this lesson, we're focusing on a G blues. So what I mean by that is the 1 chord is a G7, the 4 chord is a C7, and the 5 chord is a D7, and then back to the 1 chord. So when I'm talking about chord tones, I'm talking about the notes that make up the chord. So the most essential notes of a chord are what make the triad. So that's going to be the 1, the major third, and the 5. If you're playing a minor chord, then it's going to be a minor third, which is half a step down. So for a G7, I have my 1, which is the root here, and my third is this major third, the B note, and then my 5 is the D note here. So instead of thinking about what the notes actually are, I want you to focus on how you can find them easily if you have the root of a chord. So for this example with the G chord, the major third is going to be half a step down on the next string over. And that's going to exist everywhere on the neck except for one spot, which I'll show you. So if I have a G note here, here's my major third. The next G note happens here on the 10th fret, and that means my major third is going to be the next string down, half a step back. So same thing. What about on the next string? Well, I have a G here on the 5th fret of the D string. My major third, same thing, half a step down on the next string over. This is where it gets a little bit trickier because on the guitar, once you get to the G and B strings, the interval between the strings changes. So instead, when I find my G note here, the major third is actually on the same fret on the next string over. So I have 12th and here, both 12th fret. And then for the last 2 strings, you can use the shape from before. So that would look like this. So right away, just by knowing the root note, you can find your major third all over the neck. And we'll use the same concept to find your 5th. So to find your 5th, it's going to be on the next string over, but 2 frets up. So if I have my root note here, here's my 5th. And now I have all 3 notes of a G major triad: root, major third, and 5th. So you might have heard something in a blues before that sounds like. I'm just following the notes of the chord right there. And of course, I'm adding a little extra flavor, but don't worry about that. So now that we know how to find our 5th, 2 frets up on the next string. Here's my next G note. Here's a 5th. Here's a 5th. And then again, once we get to these 2 strings, the G and the B string, it's going to change just slightly. So instead, we'll find our G note on this string, and the 5th is going to be 3 frets up instead. And then finally, once we go back here, it's the same. Hey guys, before we move on with the lesson, I just wanted to quickly ask you to please subscribe if you're enjoying the video. That stuff goes a long way. If everyone who watched my last video subscribes to this video, I could be doing this for a living and provide much better content for the future. I also want to mention that on Thursday, I'm dropping a video with one of my favorite guitarists on the planet right now, Aaron Shreve. And it's a video where he talks about how he improvises over a pretty simple chord progression. So hit the subscribe button if you want to check it out. Anyways, back to the video. All right, so now let's apply that to each chord in the blues. So if I have the 1 chord, which is G, I have my root, third, 5th, root, third, 5th. So what about the next chord, that C7? I have the root, third, 5th, and the 5 chord D, root, third, 5th. And we can use this concept in let's say I have a C here. I have my root, third, fifth, D chord, root, third, fifth. So now what I would recommend is literally just highlight those chord tones playing along. Don't keep it fancy, just play slowly and look for those chord tones in each of those chords. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's the 1 chord. Let's go to the 4 chord. To the 5 chord. 1. To the 5. So first get that comfortable on your fingers, and then it's time to start exploring a little bit. The next most important note in these chords, since we're playing a G7, is the dominant 7th sound, which is this note here. Again, that's just going to be called the flat 7. We don't need to go over the theory behind it. But if you want to find your flat 7 on any string, if you know your G note here, the flat 7 is going to exist on the same fret 2 strings back. So if I have my G here, here's the flat 7th, same on this string set. And then on this string set, it will change. And then it'll go back to normal. Here we have, but you don't really need to focus on that one. So now, if I know that I have my G7 like this, and my C7, and my D7, this is where things can start to get really fun and interesting. So I'm going to play through 2 rounds using these chord tones as examples. The first time, I'm only going to highlight the chord tones very simply just using the arpeggios. And then the second time, I will play the pentatonic scale to show how that really adds the vocal melodic character of playing through a blues. So here we go. So you should notice that you're able to hear the chords going by while I'm playing with no music in the background, no backing tracks, none of that. And all I'm doing is highlighting those chord tones, that root, that major third, the 5th, and the flat 7. It's really that simple. The beautiful thing about this stuff is once you apply it to your blues playing, you're gonna start seeing it all over the neck with any chord changes that are going by, and you're gonna realize how important that root, 3rd, and 5th are in terms of highlighting your chords as they go by. The last thing I wanna say is this is really just the beginning of learning how to play through changes using your triad notes. There is so much more to explore with the blues, but this is really a good foundation to get started instead of immediately going, okay, what are my scales? What are my arpeggios? What do I need to do to highlight each chord as it goes by? Just focus on your chord tones at first, and once that gets comfortable, you can start using the pentatonic stuff that you've already learned over the years and apply it to actually playing through the changes. All right, so that's gonna be it for this lesson today, guys. I hope a lot of that makes sense. I mean, really, if you just focus on your root, your 3rd, and your 5th, whether it's a major chord, a minor chord, or a dominant chord, you are going to be light years ahead of where you were before just knowing your pentatonic scale. I'm doing these 5-minute Monday lessons every single Monday for free, so if you want to support the channel, just hit the subscribe button, leave a comment letting me know what you think about the videos. It really goes a long way. And like I said before, if everyone that watches this video subscribed, I could be doing this for a living full time and provide better videos. But for now, my name's Jesse Glick. That was a 5-minute Monday, and I'll see you in the next one.